All right, so if you just kind of mechanically go through the process and you get 0 and 400, you plot those down, you are going to have to test that first interval, right? So you'll have 3 intervals to test. However, if we think critically about what we are working with, if we use some critical thinking here, remember that we are trying to minimize average cost. And so at the beginning of the problem, if you say, well, what is going to be my domain of this function? Again, that's usually what we're supposed to do and what we want to do when we are trying to minimize a function. So if you think about what the average cost function looked like, remember the average cost function was 16 over x to the 1/2 plus x over 1,000. So if I looked at this function and said, what is the domain? Because I have a square root in the denominator, I would say that all of my x values need to be strictly greater than 0. So remember that I said, when you draw your derivative number line, you technically want to put this in conjunction with the domain. So because the domain is not all real numbers, we really shouldn't be drawing a number line that goes from negative infinity to infinity. What we should be doing is we should be drawing a number line that starts at 0 and then goes out to infinity. That would be our derivative number line, keeping in mind what the domain actually is. So if you have that critical thinking part of what is my domain, then right there you're going to see that there's only really 2 intervals to test rather than the 3 intervals that we're getting when we're not thinking about our domain. Now, I go through it this way with the 3 intervals because sometimes students don't realize that this interval really shouldn't be tested. And I just want to show you that, even if you don't make that realization, you are going to make the realization that 400 is the critical number that minimizes average cost. But if we're doing this in critical thinking and we're really thinking about, what is our domain for this function, and we draw our derivative number line with that domain in mind, it really will just be 2 intervals to test. We'll get a negative here, we'll get a positive here, and that will tell us very quickly that yes, we're minimizing at 400.